Okay, good morning.
Thank you. Okay, Shin Ayin Bet. We're in the middle of Shin Ayin Bet. Tet Vav. Just a quick practical case to recap from this entire Shin Ayin Bet. If you have a city with no Eruv, or you don't hold the Eruv, and you have two neighbors, it could be back to back, next door, and you share the wall of a chatzar. You each have your backyard. Front yard, backyard, it's enclosed, and the kids are playing ball. And the ball goes from one chatzar to another chatzar. Can you throw it back on Shabbos? Or you're adults, and you want to pass, chairs across, whatever you want to do, can you, lachatchila, pass from one chatzar to another?
And the ball and the chairs started out in a house, but even Shabbos.
So, it depends if the ball or chair was started out in at Bein Hashmashos, where was it? Was it outside or in your house? So that's basically the answer. If it was outside, in the backyard, when Shabbos started, it's 100% mutter to throw it back from one neighbor to another, even though you guys never made an Eruv together. However, if it was in your house, and you want to pass it to your neighbor over the fence, then that's not allowed unless you had an Eruv between the two of you. So now what we're learning is, you didn't have a whole tzuras petach built from your front. You want to just pass it over from one neighbor to another, even when it was in your house on Shabbos. So that's where it comes in. You can build a sulam, your ladder. Each of you build a ladder, and on one side opposite each other, each one, and then you can carry across. So also, just recap, anytime you have, let's say, a lobby of an apartment building, anything, stairwell of an apartment building, and there was no Eruv done within the apartment building, anything that was in the lobby or staircase can be moved around as much as you want within the lobby or staircase, because it's one chatzar. And even though it's shared, it's not a problem. The only time you have to make an Eruv is to carry from a house, or the apartments to the chatzar. That's also, you need because it's not their own personal chatzar, it's a shared chatzar. And just one quick thing, what about a balcony? Let's say you have, it's more common when you have, let's say one balcony, let's say an apartment building, and it sits over a big chatzar from down below. The main floor, let's say, has the main big backyard, and you have a balcony that is over your neighbor below, and a ball falls down, or you want to throw your garbage down there, or you want to throw him a drink, whatever you want to do, can you transfer from the balcony to below? So if the balcony does not have a roof, for sure it's no question, it has the same din as a chatzar and a gag, and it's 100% mutter if it was in the balcony or the chatzar, the Bein Hashmashos. If it has a roof, I would have thought it's the same thing as a gag, but based on the first seif of the Mishnah Berurah, I didn't see anyone else who discusses it. Just based on the first seif of Shin Ayin Bet, it could be wherever there's a roof that has the same din as a house, since it stems out from the house and it also has a roof. So I'll leave that as a tzarechiyah.
We saw an unusual case where the balcony, or more likely a windowsill, which is very wide, has no walls. Then there's different office there too.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's get to Tet Vav. Haya Ilan. I put out a picture. It's a little weird case, but you've got basically a tree that looks like a ladder. The branches make up the rungs, and it's 4 tefachim wide, and it's right next to the wall. All right? So that can be used as a ladder, to be considered like a petach from one side to the other. Haya ilan b'tzad hakotel v'yasel sulam lakotel. It's acting as a ladder, the tree. Im ratzu me'arvin echad, if they want to. You're allowed to, now, the two chatzeros, there is no other way to get from one to another, because their front is by a Carmelis. They didn't build a tzuras petach, or a Rosh Hashanah, whatever. So you're allowed to use this tree. Im ratzu me'arvin echad, you can make it as one Eruv. Aval. Now, you can't necessarily climb on it on Shabbos, but it might be good enough to use for the din of Eruvei Chatzeros, even though you can't actually climb on it. So we'll see. There's two opinions over here. The halacha is like the first one. where it's all based on, is it an Isser Darabanan or an Isser Daraisa? So let's see. So climbing on a tree would only be an Isser Darabanan. So it's still good enough for an Eruv Chatzeros. If you use an Asherah tree that has to be burned down, it was used for Avodah Zarah. So Sulam Lakotel, and that's what you have for okay. Then you can't use it. Because it's Asr Minatorah to go on. Sheherei Asura Be'ana. You don't want to get Ana from an Asherah tree. Therefore you can't climb on it, so it's Asr Minatorah, and therefore you can't use it for Eruv Chatzeros. Okay, so that's the halacha. V'harosh zal, but the Rosh Chata Behefech. He learns the opposite. The din is the opposite. Why? It's all based on Hilchos Shabbos. For the halachas of Eruvin Chatzeros, it doesn't matter what you're really allowed to use or not use. Really, you're not supposed to use both in general. But it depends on Hilchos Shabbos. That's it's going to be Koveya if you could use it for Eruvin Chatzeros. The Ilan Eino Mo'il V'Asherah Mo'elis. Because for an Ilan, you're not allowed to climb an Ilan on Shabbos. Even though it's a din d'Rabbanan, we're talking Hilchos Shabbos over here. V'Asherah Mo'elet. But Asherah, you're allowed to climb on because it has nothing to do, it's Asr because of Avodah Zarah. It has nothing to do with Hilchos Shabbos. V'hu sheteheh yevesha. But it has to be a tree that doesn't have any leaves and fruit on it that you can pluck off. Mikar din, you're allowed to climb on such a tree. Lahalacha, we generally say it's aser, but that's like a chumrah midarabanan. But so you can't climb on a tree no matter what, whether it's. But either way, so anyway, so that's why mikar din. It used to be okay to climb on such a tree. All right, so that's the Rosh. Okay, Ted Zayin. Charit shebein shtei chatzeros. Now, you have in the middle of two courtyards, two chatzeros. How is it? You don't have a wall, you have a trench going all the way from one end to the other. So it's acting as a wall. Because it's amok asara, v'rachav arba. It's 4 wide, makam chashuv, and it's 10 deep. Right? That's the height of a wall. So this acts as a proper wall. Ein yakolin la'arev yachad. Afilu male teven v'kash. So then you can't combine because there's no proper petach, there's no walkway between the two chatzeros, so there's no way to join them, to make one eruv, to carry from one to another. Right? Obviously we're going to see there's a way to fix it. But, okay. Even if you fill it in, if it's something that's just zmani, it's like food. It's food for an animal, and you're going to remove it, so then you're not allowed to, and if you didn't, be mevatel it and say, I'm leaving it here. So it's a machlokas if it's for one Shabbos or forever. And the Mishnah Berurah is going to say, we're makel as long as you leave it there for one Shabbos. If you have kavanah to be mevatel for at least one Shabbos, it's good enough. But so for that one Shabbos, you're not going to use it as food, you're not going to remove it to give to your animal. So then it's good enough. But if you fill it up with dirt normally you leave it there forever. So there automatically, afilu stama, even without saying, right, for kash, for straw, you can leave it there with saying you're mevatel it. But for dirt, you don't have to. It doesn't have to be specific. Okay, shalom bitlo. Tzrichim la'arev yachad. So then you have to, because now the two chatzeros are open. If it's completely open to each other, then you have to make one eruv together. All of you together, unless obviously it's only a petach. If it's just partially fenced off and partially open, then you have a choice. You can marvin echad, marvin shtayim. You can choose to have it as a doorway, right? And the doorway doesn't ruin a wall. So then you can choose if you want to make one eruv together or not. Haga yesh omrim the imilaam the perot stama bitlo la the darkamaso cham otzar. And the Ramah over here says, and if you fill it up with fruit, talking about in those days they used to fill it up with fruit, and stama they wouldn't eat from it. They left it there, I don't know, weeks, months, the seasons. That's how they kept it cool. That's how they saved it. And obviously it wasn't forever, but he held as long as it was there for a short amount of time. But for that time you weren't going to touch it. That's the stam. Then it's good enough. Okay, Yud Zayin. Natan alav nasa. Now, what happens if you make a bridge? You put a plank of wood, a across. It's 4, and it's imu rachav arba'a, and it has to be the bridge, the plank that goes across the trench. There's a picture about it, but I think it's pretty simple. Where's the picture? The Dirshu has a picture, but this is just a picture of a trench, wherever it is. It was here. Mm-hmm. Here's a picture. Basically, just have a big trench we described that goes straight through. Yeah, and if you put just a board of wood across, pretty easy to imagine, then as long as it's 4 wide, then that's considered a walkway. And then chashuv kepetach counts as a walkway or an opening. U'me'arvin echad v'imratzu me'arvin shnayim. And you have a choice to make an eruv just among one chatzer with the batim and exclude the other one, or you can include everybody. Just everyone you have to be mezakeh for everybody. I don't know if we'll get to those halachos if we didn't, but then you just have to include everybody with the bread. Okay. Let's see. Not Haga. V'hu adin imila'o berochav arba'a b'devara mevat lo sham. Or you just fill it up with anything, and then it's mevatel it. We pretty much had that case. V'im natan haneser le'orach charitz b'meshech arba'a. Or the other option is you don't have to make a complete bridge that goes across the trench from one chatzer to the other. You could just have a little piece of wood that just jets out a little bit into the trench. As long as you have a little piece of wood that takes up 4 tefachim wide, so your walkway ki'ilu is you're walking in 4 tefachim, and now you don't have and it's just has to be long enough that, like, you don't have to have a full bridge that goes from one side to the other. You can have a half a bridge where it closes off, so the bridge reaches within 3 tefachim of the other side, or 4 tefachim of the other side. Yeah.
You need to do that.
Has to be what?
Why would you need to do it? As long as you now, it was exactly 4.
If it was exactly
tefachim wide.
Yeah, the whole trench is 4 tefachim wide, then you just have to have a mashahu.
Yeah.
Exactly. If it's a much wider trench, then you need it to go up until within the 4 tefachim. Exactly. Here, if it's exactly 4, it just has to be a mashahu. A mashahu of a width of 4 tefachim, like so that. Okay. Hafilu ein bo ela kol shehu. That's what you just said. Chashuv kepetach sheherei miotel me'arba'a. Right. The point is you have to make one area where it's of 4 tefachim, where it's less than 4 tefachim. The trench is less than 4 tefachim. Okay. Yud chet. Im hecharitz ar amak le'echad asara. If you have a charitz, this trench on one chatzer, it's 10 deep. Ulasheni eno amak asara, and on the other side, it's less than 10. Or shehu shava lishneim, where it's equal to both of them. Dino kekotel. So here you can have, let's say the trench is exactly 10 on one side. Sometimes you have where the level of the ground is not exactly the same. So on one side it'll be 10, and on one side it'll be 9, let's say. So that can happen sometimes. So, especially if it's built on a hill. So then, it has the same din that we learned earlier. I don't have to repeat all the details, but basically if you have 2 chatzeros, and the level of the land again is different, and you have a wall in between. And the wall is thick, of 4 tefachim, let's say, and the wall on one side is going to be 10 high, and the other wall side is going to be 9 high, because the floor is higher. So can you you can't make a walkway over here, but unless you make a bridge. But the question is, can you put something from one chatzer and just use the space to put stuff inside the trench? Or if you have a ball and it rolls in, right? So it rolls in, and you want to take it out and put it back into your chair falls in, whatever falls in, and you want to take it out and put it back on your side. So if the trench on your side is less than 10, then it's okay, and if it's more than 10, it's not. I believe. Okay, whatever. It goes back to a few seifim ago. Okay. Yotet. Gadish shel teven. Sheben shtei chatzerot. So now, if you have a gadish, a whole bundles of straw, and that's between your 2 chatzeros, imhu gavoa asara, if it's 10 high, Kol echad me'arev la'atzmo. So each person has to make his own eruv, because it acts as a wall. And now you don't have, and there's no petach. So each chatzer has to make, each group of houses to their chatzer has to make their own eruv. Nitma'et b'chol me'asara. Now let's say it gets lower than 10 tfachim high during the week. Tzrichim la'arev b'yachad. So now, if the whole wall becomes less, the whole gadish, the whole bundle becomes less than 10, then you don't have a wall in between, so they have to make an eruv to each other. Because it's like because really if the wall is not 10 and there's no wall, then it becomes one big courtyard with lots of different batim and everyone has to join together. The time when you have an option is if you have a wall on each, but part of it is open. Okay. ובעוד שלא נתמעט, אסור לשום אחד מהם ליתן מן התבן לתוך קופתו בשבת לאכילה ולהמתו. And as long as it didn't go lower than 10, so now you're using it for a wall, you're not allowed to take away from it to feed to your animals. And to bring it there for them to also eat is also asr, because he might come. So it's a din darabanan. If you bring your animal there and you tell him to eat from here, we're afraid you're going to grab it with your hand and grab a big bundle and give it to your animal to eat to make it easier for him. If he goes there on his own, it's not a problem because animals on their own, they eat a little bit at a time and you're not worried he's going to eat away your whole wall. But if a person comes, people come, big eyes, and they grab a whole bunch and we're afraid he's going to end up making the wall fall apart on Shabbos. But you can stand in a way where he's for sure going to go there. You can't drag him there and stand with him and bring him there and stand with him, but you can stand in a position where he's going to end up going there to eat on his own. Okay, it's a din derabanan. And the rush is machmer even during the week, not because we're afraid it'll lead into, you won't have it during Shabbos, I believe. Mm-hmm. Right. So we're afraid it's a gzera. We're afraid if during the week you are allowed to eat from there, then when Shabbos starts, without realizing it, there might not be a wall left, and you thought there would be a wall. So that's why. And
so the concern is that not everybody will realize that it's one chutzner, and people will carry, even though not everybody made an error.
We're afraid, right? Everyone's assuming there's a wall, and each one made their own. Each chatzeros made their own eruv, and people aren't going to realize that one of the guys ruined the wall. And if you allow him to feed from it, then it would be a problem. Obviously, you can remove the whole wall, and it's obvious. But to start having one person feed his animal and take a little bit at a time, before you know it, the wall might be missing. This is with a bundle of hay that you can feed your animals with. There isn't this gzera if it's between two houses. Okay. The reason why is because there's a roof over there between the two houses. If you have two houses and the wall, there's a roof over this whole area, and you have a wall between two houses. And so since there's a ceiling, it'll be noticeable. We're not afraid that it's going to come out that you're less than 20, that you have it a little bit less than 10 high, and you'll notice it. If you start having 8 tfachim, 9 tfachim, it'll be obvious when there's a ceiling that there's a big gap, and there's not this chashash darabanan that you're going to end up with people thinking there's a full wall and it's not a full wall. Okay. Shin Ayin Gimel. Okay, I don't know if this case is a little more practical. Let's see. Shin Ayin Gimel. Din shtei gezistrot b'shtei aliyot. So now we've got, to keep the case real simple, you have a street. And across the street, you have two apartment buildings opposite each other across the street. One like in the picture here. One balcony opposite another balcony with the street in the middle. Okay, across the street. So then, a Gazisra has 2 balconies, but basically it's 2 boards. Generally, it's without railings. That's the simple case. Is you have 2 boards of wood, a little bit like the balcony with no walls. Habotot mishtei aliyot zo keneged zo. So you have 2 of them, one opposite another. And let's just assume that there's a window or a doorway from the house. So therefore it has the din of a Rosh Hashanah. And they're sticking out. Opposite each other. V'natan b'neim neser rachav arba'a. And now you want to be able to carry from one to another on Shabbos, or to make an eruv from one house to another through a bridge. So what do? You take a board. You take a board and you put it across. It has to be at least 4 wide, right? And this acts as a bridge, and it's and a doorway, ki'ilu for the hilchos of Eruvin Chatzeros. And these 2 people in separate houses can make an eruv from one to another. Haga. And if the distance between the 2 balconies are less than 4 tfachim, not 3, 4, afilu below neser nami dinahachi, then it's also not a problem because it's easy to walk across. And it's easy to walk across, and therefore it has the din of as a walkway. Since it's easy to walk, one of my kids pointed out, a normal step is an amma, which is 6 tfachim. So if that helps you remember, it's easy to walk from one to another if it's only 4 tfachim apart without falling through. Just one little thing here. If the 2 balconies would be on the same side of the street, like two balconies on the same apartment building, one next sideways, so the Pri Megadim says it has to be within 3 tfachim. Because we know if you're handing over sideways, if there's a Rosh Hashanah over it, then it would be an Issa Deraisa of carrying. But that's if it's over a Rosh Hashanah, not if it's over a Chatzar. But anyway, got that, great. If not, not. But okay, it's a very unusual case.
If you don't, that's all if you want to go from the house
to from one apartment to the other apartment.
And you want to go from one marpeset to the other, you wouldn't be there, right?
To go from one marpeset to another. Well, the thing is, here you have a reshus harabim in between you. So I think you still need to have a bridge if it's more than 3 or 4.
Or it's closer than 3.
Yeah, if it's closer than 3, for sure, no problem. And if it's opposite each other, if it's for sure 4, is no problem. Okay. V'im ratzu kol achat me'aravet la'atzma. And you also have a choice that each chatzar can be separate from each other. That's also fine. You have a choice either way. But it's like this plank is like a doorway. Okay? Unless it's, again, all these cases are if it's complete, if you end up losing the complete wall, or if the bridge is wider than 10 amos, so then it's not a normal doorway again, and then you have to combine the 2. Aval, ima yu zo shelo keneged zo. Now, you have these 2 balconies. They're diagonal, exactly. They're not opposite each other. They're diagonal to each other. That's what it means. She'achat meshucha lemizrach ve'achas lemarav. One of them is a little bit more east, and one's a little bit more west. In other words, they're diagonal. Einam yecholim arev yachad. You can't make an erev between the 2 of them.
Why?
So why not? So two reasons are given. Either because it's considered not pleasant to walk at a diagonal, or it's considered like a petach bekeren zavit. You're not allowed to make a doorway buildings are not usually made with doorways in the corner, unless you have a special frame. But otherwise, usually doorways are not in the corners; they're on in the middle of one of the walls. So therefore, if you have an opening at a corner, it's not normal. That's the halacha. Okay.
You could apply that diagonal from the middle to the middle.
So some say it's a machlokas. If you can put a plank on the 2 corners itself, everyone agrees it would be a problem. If you put the plank a little bit off, where it's in the middle of each balcony and not on the actual corner, so that's a machloket achronim. Okay, based on Machloket Rishonim. Aval, im depends on the reason you give. Aval, im hayu zo shelo keneged zo, that's the case we just had. V'cheni maita achas gavua mechaverta lo chashi petach. Also, if one is higher than another, it's not considered. If you have the two balconies and they're higher apart from each other, then it has to be on the same level to be a petach. However, let's keep reading. That's if it's separated by 3 tvachim. In other words, even if it's at an angle and the corners are less than 3 tvachim from each other, that's good enough. Or if the height is off by 2.5 tvachim, it's also not a problem. It's okay if it's a little bit. People can walk at a little bit of a change from one step to another, but not more than 3 tvachim. Either way, and it's okay. Stop here.